Hello there. We're in London again today. We're in the city, which is the heart of the financial district. It's part of the old Roman area of London. And this is one of my favourite views. This is St Mary Axe behind the church. And I came here to draw it. And there was a big building site going on the Leadenhall Street building. This is sometimes known as the cheese grater beside it, which is, again, a lovely building. I like that a lot. But the noise was a little bit too much. So I turn around and what do I see? Of course, it's the Lloyds building. And the Lloyds building has always been my favourite City of London building, just because it's so radical and so extreme and creates so much kind of, so many different emotions in people. Some people really hate it. They think it looks like like an oil platform or a refinery, something like that. It's an office building. It's built around the idea of all the services, meaning the air conditioning and the water and the staircases, and everything's on the outside of the building so that the inside's very pure. The inside is dedicated to insurance, Lloyds, the insurers, and the outside is, if you ever need to repair anything, you do it from the outside without troubling the inside. It's quite a beautiful kind of concept. Anyway, it looks quite extreme and I like it. We're going to be doing a quick sketch today, and I wanted to do it in a very loose and free way. So I'm using the Yupo paper again, which is the polypropylene paper or sheet. And I'm going in without any pencil guidelines or structure first, just straight in with a Tombow, which is, I think of as like a shadow pen. The benefit of this process is, well, firstly for you really, because it enables you to see me constructing in a clean way. If I was using a pencil, it will be very faint. That would be the point of it, to be very faint, so it's kind of invisible at the end. And that doesn't really help you if you're looking at it. So I'm going in with a pen that is pale enough that I can supersede it afterwards. I can put stronger colours over the top, and if I make mistakes in this initial drawing, I can do a little bit to correct them by using stronger colours over the top. So sometimes it can be fun to consider the sort of faintness of your pen as being a way of setting up the stages of a drawing, the first stage, the second stage, where it becomes more confident and more assured the darker the colour becomes. It's not a typical way of doing things. It's very much to do with recording and YouTube and everything else. But it is quite enjoyable, and I do quite enjoy it because it is a sort of a challenge. I think when you're doing a drawing like this is an extremely complex corner of the city, and it's the kind of place where you could spend 3 or 4 hours quite happily and come away with an accurate drawing. And I think there's an enjoyment in saying, well, let's not do that then. Let's do a true urban sketch, which is drawn in situ, in the correct position, looking at the correct thing, but it's a sketch. It's quick. It's not meant to be a sort of precious or a painting that feels completely resolved. It's not a representation that's meant to be definitive. It's just a sketch. You're just having some fun. I do these at A3 because I find it actually easier to draw at A3, but most people would do this at a smaller size, A4 smaller, something that they could just carry in a pocket. And I think I'm using the kind of style that kind of size would work for as well. That sort of smaller size, this kind of very immediate and quick and sketchy, confident marking, and allowing the sort of impact of the view to affect how I construct this drawing. I mean, you'll see I've used what I call jokingly banana lines. So the lines on the right hand side specifically, because the building is so close to me and so tall, it warps as my head turns to look up at it. I'm aware of it's kind of bending over the top of me, and I want to sort of accentuate that. So I'm using a curve to the line in order to make it bend over the top of the viewer. And that's something you do knowingly. I mean, when you're putting that first line on, you think, I'll tell you what, I'll banana this. Sometimes it's nice to keep very strict. I mean, I'm a fan of straight lines and verticals being vertical, or sort of 2-point perspective rules. But sometimes if you're going to go 3-point perspective, which this is, meaning that things kind of point towards a point in the middle of the sky right above you, everything seems to be converging on a point in the middle of the sky, high up there, that if you're going to do that, sort of accentuate it, make a play on it. Don't be subtle. This is not a subtle view. This is not a subtle area of the city. It's vibrant and dynamic, and using a vibrant, dynamic and sort of energetic drawing style seems appropriate. And added to that, the Yupo paper, the polypropylene paper, which is extremely smooth and takes certain kinds of colour in a very interesting way. And I found that things like the alcohol markers, the Ahuhu markers, and the acrylic paint pens, they love this paper. They love this kind of sheet, this plastic sheet. They really adhere to it in an interesting way, that they feel fresh again and feel young again. The difference between a paper like this and an ordinary kind of paper, or most specifically a watercolor style paper, is typical traditional papers have been made to allow ink to soak into them. So in the act of soaking in, there's a slight diffusion. The color can seem to weaken slightly, but when you're using these polypropylene sheets, the Yupo paper, it sits on the surface and it reads stronger, for me anyway. It reads truer. It reads as if it's just pure ink sitting there looking back at you. It's not soaked in. It can't soak in. The paper won't allow for it. So there's something super immediate about that feels very modern. It feels artificial because it's obviously a plastic. But if you're in a space like this, which is full of modern high-tech architecture, it feels appropriate to do that. I mean, I could have done a drawing like this with watercolor paper and watercolor paints, and it would have felt an odd juxtaposition, I think, to use such an old-fashioned technique on such a sort of modernist approach to an architectural form. Now, I've gone about this drawing with a very specific game plan, and that is to sort of minimize color variation. I'm known for being quite extreme in my colors, and I actively choose in this view, because the buildings are so extreme in themselves, that if I felt as if I went in there with extreme contrasting colors, I don't know, I'd be fighting that. I wouldn't be respecting that the architecture itself is already extreme. So I've gone in with in my mind, a very limited palette of blue and grey, because a lot of the building of the Lloyds is covered in stainless steel. And the stainless steel, in my eyes, reflects the blue of the sky. And the building on the horizon, which is the Fenchurch Street building, which is known in a friendly way as the Walkie Talkie building, because it has so much glass on it, that's also reflecting the sky. And so the view is predominantly blue in my eyes. So I'm responding to that using blue as the sort of dominant reflection to bring that sort of simplistic energy to the view. Drawings like this can be quite overwhelming. They are potentially something that might frighten, because there's so much going on. There's so many different vanishing points, so many different sort of elements that are going to be shouting. So it's kind of healthy, I think, to go in with a simple game plan, and you can adjust that and make it more complex as you feel you want to. So for example, you'll note that what I'm doing here is using the grey to set up the base, using the blue to sort of denote glass primarily, and the stainless steel, going in with a fine black line to denote the sharpness of edges, and then a thicker black line towards the end of the drawing. Now the trick will be that I want the foreground to read as stronger than the background, so I'm going to use my thicker black lines in foreground elements and try and keep that far building as sketchy as possible. So I'm still going to put some black line in there, but I'm going to keep it fine, so it sort of fades back a bit. That's just a simple way of reassuring yourself that it's not going to go too far wrong. You'll also note that I'm not being too slavish to the actual reality of what I'm looking at. In the building I'm working on now has windows and mullions and complications in them, and I'm implying them, I'm referring to them. I'm actually not spending too much time studying the buildings and the forms, specifically those further back ones, and trying to accurately draw them. I'm not counting windows, in other words. And even with the Lloyds building itself, which is close to me, I'm sort of looking and making a reference to what I want to draw, and then I'm drawing it, and I'm drawing it as it goes up the building. There will be errors. There will be things which are not drawn as strongly as they could be, and that's fine because it's a representation. I'm not trying to accurately represent every line that I see in architectural form on this drawing. I'm trying to reference it. I'm trying to give it the flavour of it. And the bits I'm less interested by, which is really the mid-ground buildings, I'm putting the least amount of love in terms of my attention. I'm spending the time where I want the eye of the viewer to spend their time. Now, the reason the Lloyds building is important to me, and to Londoners in general, is its age. It was started on site in 1978, which is post-punk, if you know your music trends. Therefore, it was designed in 76, 77. Therefore, it's designed in punk and built post-punk. So it has that radical inversion of what is normal and traditional. And now when we look at it, there's lots of modern extreme buildings around. But in 1978, when they started to build this was something else. This looked like an alien sort of sci-fi ship had landed in the middle of the traditional stone and brick city. And it was a shock. It was the beginning of the truly modern in this kind of traditional world of the bank and the insurance companies. And it created a massive stir, a massive kind of revolution, really, in what is possible in the building of offices, and how a company can represent itself as a modern, free-thinking, dynamic company through the architecture that it chooses to express itself through. So that was extremely exciting to me at the time. And I did visit it when it was being built and was completely blown away by it. It still blows me away today. And I think that's the mark of truly exciting buildings, that you never quite become tired of them. You know, they're always surprising you and always giving you more. And I've drawn it a number of times before, and each time it feels fresh and exciting. I mean, this for me is like the modern alternative to drawing Tower Bridge. You know, it has that sense of, if I was on a desert island and I could only draw one thing for the rest of my life, I'd be quite happy if on the desert island beside me was the Lloyds building, because I'd draw that. There's every view of it is different. There's, the way the sun hits it makes it read and feel differently, and it has such personality. And that personality is kind of, well, not exactly violent, but extreme. It's absolutely standing up for itself. It's got a Mohican, if you know what that is, in punky hairstyle ways. It's got a real sense of flicking V's, as the English would say, to the traditional sort of business world around it, and being truly itself. So for that reason alone, really, the Lloyds has always been one of my favourite drawing topics. Now, a word on urban sketching itself. In my eyes, it seems to be becoming more and more popular every month. There seems to be more and more urban sketching groups around me. In fact, I was walking down my local street the other day, and there was a whole group of sketchers there, and I went up to one of them, which group are you from? And they're from the Crouch End sketchers, who I'd never heard of, who are an area north of where I am. And I'm just thinking, it's so cool that these little kind of communities form little clubs, and they go out and they draw other parts of the city they live in, and even travel further afield and draw together. And the key is always drawing as a community, I guess, and drawing outside so that community feels bonded by being somewhere that nobody really knows very well. That sense of, it's a little holiday to go somewhere else and draw it together. And I think there's something truly lovely about that. It's something that people misunderstand, I think, about urban sketching. I think they think it's about sketching the buildings. So you'll see a lot of YouTubers talking about urban sketching as if it's just an act of drawing buildings. It's about the community that comes from that, and the spirit, the connection you have between the people you draw with, perhaps, but also more importantly, I suppose, with the buildings themselves. That's why it's written in the Urban Sketchers kind of guide that it has to be done on site. They're not being snobby about it. They're just saying that's how the connection is made. The connection isn't made to a flat image like a photograph or a screen image. It's made to the three-dimensional, because by looking at the three-dimensional, you see things differently. In this building, for example, I just walked around it for 20 minutes to find exactly where I wanted to draw it from. So I understand the building three-dimensionally. I understand the place I'm sitting and why I chose it. It's not just an image I found that is convenient. It's like a tourist image that is perfectly set up for me to recreate. This is a living decision. I've decided it based on where is convenient, where the light is, where the view is, where the drama is. Now, those of you who know Paris at all, or the buildings of Paris, might see a familiar connection with the Pompidou, the wonderful kind of art centre in the middle of Paris. It's designed by the same people. This building, the Lloyds building, was designed by Richard Rogers, and Richard Rogers and Renzo Piano designed the Pompidou. And they have very similar philosophies in terms of a very simple, square internal space, very pure, very easy to adapt and do different things with, sort of multifunctional internal spaces, and achieving that by, as I say, putting all the services, all the complex fiddly bits on the outside, and allowing that outside, that kind of functional outside, to become decorative through its rhythm, but there's no sort of time given over to making it look pretty. It's trusting that you will understand that the beauty of it comes in how it works. I would compare it to, if you've ever seen like a engine inside a fast car, like a Ferrari or something, a McLaren. You open up the bonnet, you open up where the engine is, and you take a look at it, and it looks brutal and raw and beautiful. It's a sort of sculptural without ever trying to be. Every single pipe, every single bend of metal is because of functional need, but it somehow has this sort of brutal, energetic kind of coolness to it. And that's exactly how I see the Lloyds. It feels as if it's not in any way trying to make it easy on you. It's got its own job to do, and it's doing it with full vigor. And you have to respect it for its will, its drive. So buildings like this are fantastically exciting to draw, and I will be drawing this again and again. I'll never stop, because there's something eternal about buildings like these. And I think it's really exciting for people like us to draw old things, draw new things. I mean, I was just a couple of days ago drawing a building that was nearly 500 years old. This building here, albeit it's a modernist building, a very modern building, it's 50 years old now, I think, 47 years old. And that sense of being able to draw old and new with the same kind of with you being the same person, and the thing that's different is the building, and then you're responding to that building. I think that's really exciting. I think that's what urban sketching is about. It's about that response you have, or that response you generate, because obviously you sit down and you make your choices, don't you? I mean, I could have picked up whatever pens I wanted to pick up. I could have drawn it in different ways. So it's very much about how I respond, my choice. And it's super exciting. Sweet moment here, because I'm now recording these fully, so I just set the camera going and it records the whole process. You sometimes see that moment where I pause and think, what next? That sense of, I wonder where I should turn next. So here I'm picking up a blue pen which has a bit of green to it. It's kind of like a teal colour, and that was a moment for me, because I thought, no, hang on, this is blue and grey. That was my intention. Am I bringing in something which is a blue with a bit of green in it to respond to the specific colour of glass on the Lloyds building? And literally, I'm drumming my fingers. I wasn't even aware I was doing it. It's only now I look back at the video, and I kind of think I'm literally sitting there drumming my fingers, thinking, shall I or shan't I? Which is, I now look back and think it's quite charming. It's one of the sweet things about this kind of new way I'm recording, just recording the whole thing. It's an insight for me as well. It's interesting for me to watch back and see some of the decisions I take, because at the time I'm in the middle of the drawing. I'm in there, I'm not actually intellectualizing it. I'm not sitting back and observing myself, as it were. I'm in the sort of drama of what choice to make and whether that was the right choice and whether that line's in the right place. Remember, with all the pens I use, all these acrylic pens, they are not erasable. You make a mark and the mark is there. The only hope you have, as I say at the beginning, is if it's a pale line, you can draw over the top, sure. But a line like this, a black line, that's there forever the instant you put it down. So there's a sort of an ooh-ah moment when you're putting down intense colour, because if it's in the wrong place, well, that's on you, and move on. Do whatever you can to kind of compensate elsewhere, and that's super exciting. So here we are at the end of the drawing. It was about 40 minutes, I think. I've sped this video up to make it more appropriately sort of 15 to 20 minutes long, and it was a magnificently fun day, bright and sunny. Lloyds was very kind to me. Lots of people looking past saying very kind things, and the whole thing felt like a fun day out doing an urban sketch. There's some bits I'd do differently next time, but then isn't there always? In fact, if there wasn't bits I'd do again next time, I think there'll be something wrong with me. If you've been listening to the end, thank you so very much. I really do appreciate it, and I will see you next time. Why not try and find something modern and crazy where you live and give it a draw?